Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, and good evening to you. This is WeatherBrains episode number 770. We're doing this a Thursday night special. This is for the 15th of October, 2020. Reason we're doing a Thursday night special, I am actually going to take a couple of vacation days next week. I have not had a vacation day since last year. So for my mental health, I think we'll take a few days off next week. We've actually been short-staffed here. Typically, I take 2 weeks in the summer and then another week at Christmas. And because of the short staffing, I was not able to take any time off this summer, which is okay because of the COVID thing. Everything is just so weird anyway. But anyway, I will be off the grid a little bit next week. So this show, the audio produced podcast version will be released to the world Monday night of next week, the usual time. But for you YouTubers, you'll get it tonight. So let's invite everybody and get this thing going here. Been a busy day. The tweeter went down today. How about that? The tweeter, even the face bag had problems. So everybody was on the gram griping about the face bag and the tweeter being down. So it's been a weird day with social media. And I don't think we have a full house tonight because of the scheduling here. Again, Thursday night, for some, they were not able to make it, but a number of them will be here. And we always have fun on these off Monday night shows. We've done some Friday night specials over the year. I think we've done them every night of the week at some point. I mean, we've been doing this since 2006. In fact, next year, goodness, what's that? 15 years of WeatherBrains. Who'd have thunk it? We were podcasting before podcasting was cool. But this is the time where we share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and we occasionally say outrageous things. So if you are just joining us, if you want the actual show, move the slider a couple of minutes in. I'm actually starting a little late tonight, working on a project involving April 27th, 2011, that horrible tornado outbreak, and doing a lot of work with that. Had some of that going on tonight. But it's all good. There's our professional broadcaster, Jen.
Hi.
As opposed to us unprofessional broadcasters. I have never taken a single course in broadcasting or TV or radio or any of this stuff. None. I need to.
I did in college, but after that, I'm winging it. I've done it for so long.
Yeah, that's about, you just go out there and you be yourself. I mean, that's all you can do.
Absolutely.
I see so many young people, they get into this and they act differently when they get in front of these mics and a camera. And I'm thinking, so you go down to the Walmart and you're going to talk like this and, hey, we got sunny skies for your Thursday. And don't talk to people like that. I mean, no. Let's go down to the Walmart. Let me watch you talk with people. And then let's watch what you do on television. And it's daylight and dark. I don't understand why that is, but with me, what you see is what you get. I mean,
that's how I am. I'm just me.
And the song from the 70s, what you see is what you get.
Hi, Bill.
Hello.
It's good to see you guys.
Who did that song? The Dramatics? What you see
now,
is
let's see. That's a good question, Mr. DJ.
And Bill, if you have your professional announcer mic, I don't think it's connected.
Oh, I was using the string cams. I didn't want to plug up the other one. I can. Is that one really bad sounding?
No, it just sounds like, an internal mic on a laptop. Ooh, Betsy's on the show tonight. This is exciting.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was
I'm nervous now. I'm nervous. Now we have a true professional television person on here. So
I'm not the one that makes the big money, James Spann.
No, I get nervous around certain people. They intimidate me, and Betsy's one of them. I mean,
come on.
No. I mean, you're good, and I'm not. I mean, I'm just.
I watched
Oh,
you.
come on.
That's how I like figured out this whole severe weather thing. I mean, April of 2011, I watched for 3 days. We had just gotten our Max system, and I literally configured our entire weather system in that big event while watching you. So it was like,
Wow.
ooh, what's James? How does James do that? Let me try and figure this out. Ooh, I like how he
Wow.
did that. Can I do that?
That sounds like, it seems like an eternity ago. That's 10 years ago next
Isn't that
April, which is
amazing?
crazy.
It is.
In fact, tonight I spoke just moments ago to a lady that was in a basement in Pleasant Grove, which is a Birmingham suburb, and there were 7 people in there, and one was killed when a slab fell on her, a concrete slab, and she was cradling a 10-month-old child that survived. But anyway, I'm doing some work on the 10th anniversary of that, so I will say it is emotionally draining.
Oh,
When you go through these stories.
I can't even imagine. You know, when we had the meeting in Birmingham, you know, that was later that year.
That year.
It was so crazy. And a group of us took off and went out, and we followed the track of the Tuscaloosa 4. And I had never, and that's 6 months after the storms had come through. And it's just something that is burned in my brain, and it's something I remember every day. I have severe weather coverage because I specifically remember one of the neighborhoods that was completely gone. There were a couple houses that were just jacked up that were still left because of insurance. But in this one street, there were no houses. It was just a grassy field, and people had like little fence posts at their property markers. That's all they had. And then one of them, there was a red folding chair and a flower. And it was just the most like amazing, poignant moment. And then we went up on a hilltop, and this guy came up. He was like, "What are y'all doing up here?" And we were like, we're meteorologists. We're from all over the country and blah, blah, blah. Well, it ended up, he's a service department worker, and he was a first responder that day. And he lived around the corner, and he came out of his house to see nothing, but he could hear people yelling. And so he was like climbing over trees and trying to get to people to help them. And he was just telling us some horrific stories. So, you know, it was such an incredible event, but you know, as a meteorologist on the outside looking in from elsewhere, it's one of the biggest learning experiences I've ever had.
Yeah, and I'm still learning today about that event and what went right and what went wrong. I was going to show you guys a picture of this house. It is fresh on my mind. I'll show you what this is the house. And again, there were 7 people here, and one did pass away, but the fact that 6 survived is pretty remarkable in a property that looks like that. The lady that died was an ER nurse at St. Vincent's East, and her infant survived. And her husband, of course, survived. The others survived in there, and the child is 10 years old now, and you know, but it's going back. I guess I've never put it out of my mind. I think about this almost every day, but you know, having to talk with people and hear stories, and it's just kind of it's pretty tough. But anyway, that's not the point of this show tonight. Bill Murray, give me a mic check. Talk to me. I don't see
testing
you.
1, 2, 3. Yeah, my camera's not working since we changed mics.
You're frozen.
Yeah, I'm gonna reboot. It looks like.
Betsy, it's nice to meet you.
Hi.
I didn't know much about you, and then I saw that you're up in Cleveland, and I'm northwest of Columbus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we're Ohio girls on here.
I just muted my microphone so I could yell at my daughter to get me a glass of wine.
Oh.
I'm lost tonight.
Bring me one. Wait a minute.
Show title.
Bring Mama a glass of wine. That's about what I'm about to yell.
Tell her to bring 2, Betsy.
Yes, please make it 3.
All right. So,
that's sweet.
Bill, you talking to us?
One. Yeah, I'm trying to.
Hi, honey.
I don't know what microphone I'm on anymore.
Boy, this show's going down the tubes fast. Let me get these recorders going here. We'll get this thing in. We'll get out on time tonight. Typically on the off Monday night shows, we get out on time because we don't do all of the regular segments. So here we go. Let me be sure I got everything set right here. I think we do. All right, here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
WeatherBrains is brought to you by the great folks at Midland Weather Radio. Every home, school, and business should have a NOAA Weather Radio, the official voice of the National Weather Service.
Hey, 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 this is WeatherBrains episode number 770. It's the weekly show all about weather. This is for Monday, the 19th of October. And we'll let you know a little secret here. We're actually doing the show on Thursday night, October 15th. So we wear our hearts on our sleeves here. But I am taking a vacation week. I'm very excited. I have not had one single vacation day since last year. We have been short-staffed, and I think for your mental health, everybody needs a day off from time to time. So we hired a new meteorologist. He is in the building. He is at work. He's doing a great job, and so I'm going to take the week off. So that's the reason this is a Thursday night special. Jen, have you had a day off this year?
I've had 3. That's it. So I've had, I only get 7 during the whole year. When you're an independent contractor, you have to, kind of finagle it. But but I kind of work my schedule around where I can kind of take periods of time off. So that's how I kind of handle it. But you know what? The severe weather season for the plains has been so quiet. That's like a vacation. So it works for me.
And I will say, I will never gripe about not having a day off. I love what I do. As old as I am, I cannot wait to come to work every day, which is awesome. Yeah. Most people my age, they get old and cranky and they hate their job, and I can't stand to come in there. And no, I love this. So I will never complain about that. But I do think the pressures that you're under when you do this, we're forecasting something. We're predicting the future. That's not real easy. And sometimes you just need to get off the grid, and then the social media monster comes in. And quite frankly, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok, it's not really good for your mental health, especially when you dive into the comment section. So, kind of getting away from that for just a little bit is also a very good thing. And as Tony Rice, the great Tony Rice of this show says, Facebook is a place of bile and weapons grade ignorance often.
Agreed.
Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes I just need to rest my voice. Like I get tired. I talk a lot. So sometimes I just need a little bit of some time away to refresh and then I can get back with it again. So that's
true too. I mean, you think about all the products and services we have to produce. In my line of work for years, we worried about being on television in the evening for 3 times. And now you start, at dawn 30 at 4:45 or something, and you're doing all these digital products, and you're just talking all day. You're doing Zoom meetings with schools, and your voice does need a break. So I think that's a good thing too. But Bill Murray, I know a lot of our folks are out because this is a Thursday night special. So you, sir, will take the floor, and you, sir, will introduce our wonderful, special, amazing guest.
Well, our panelist needs no introduction. I mean, she's a tremendous friend of the show. And we adore her and have always adored her. So we love having her on whenever we can. But when we saw the opportunity to put her on with tonight's guest WeatherBrain, if we get him back, we think it'll be a really fun show. Betsy Kling, Chief Meteorologist, WKYC in Cleveland. Welcome back to WeatherBrains.
Thank you. It's happy to be here.
I recognize that couch from lots of NWA sessions that you moderated this year, right from that couch.
Bill's been helping me through some things, and I've been taking therapy sessions virtually here with Bill, getting my mind refreshed. No, this is literally the setup for National Weather Association meeting. This is where I've been. So I think the kids are upstairs getting showers and whatnot. So hopefully it stays mostly quiet.
I've never blushed.
Betsy, are you doing?
Blushed.
Hey, Betsy, are you doing the TV stuff from the house, or are you going back in the studio now?
No, I have been I've been in studio the whole time. I actually have today off. and I have tomorrow off too. So it's been
So
a
you don't
nice
turn into
kind
a
of
pumpkin
kickback
tonight.
day. I don't actually. That's one of the reasons I was trying to hunt down a glass of wine somewhere. I got to try and figure that out. Take advantage while I can.
So Betsy, tell us how it's been through the virus. I mean, it's been
I
a
gotta tell
trying
you,
experience for all of us.
It's been really weird. As I said, I am one of a small handful of people in our Nightside newsroom who's been there the whole time. Literally in March, it's like they hit the eject button and everybody was gone. So still at night, we have 5 people in the newsroom. This is top 20 market, and it's so weird. The scanners have gone to somebody's house. The phones have gone to somebody's house. So it is unusually quiet in the newsroom, which has been a really interesting change. I never realized how noisy a newsroom is because it's just an ambient noise after 20 some years. But yeah, I can literally hear the ventilation in the room. And I didn't even know that we had a fan. It's so different. Certainly. It's been challenging though, because I do have staffers who are remote. So I have to be very cognizant of our computers and how things are running, making sure things are restarted properly, and all the connections are made, and they have all the equipment that they need at home in order to be successful at this. So the station has been purchasing new laptops and, camera equipment, lighting, all this stuff that, we never had imagined having to do. And it's been tight fiscally this year for the stations too. So that's been a challenge as well.
So how do things go back toward normal, and how do they stay different?
Well, here in Ohio, we have had back-to-back the 2 highest days of new coronavirus cases in the entire pandemic, yesterday and today. So just about the time that we think things are getting, okay, yeah, we're doing great. Now it's like, wait a second, it's starting to go the other direction. And certainly it seems like it's becoming more of a problem again. The virus itself seems to not be hitting with as much severity as it has before. So either people are just more aware of it and catching it earlier, or they're just not panicking if they get a sniffly nose or whatever. But that has definitely been an interesting fact in all this, is that it is getting worse. And, with getting back to normal, it's baby steps. So interesting side note, our technical ops manager in our station is former military. He was an Army bigwig. He was a pilot, helicopter pilot. He was a commander of his group and all that stuff. So when the pandemic hit and it was time to figure out, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Well, he was like, I got this. And we were separated into color-coded teams, and we had certain doors and certain bathrooms and certain kids. I mean, it was amazing how he kind of got us into our teams, and that way we are all separated. All the surfaces we touch are separated. So it's all an effort to not have cross-contamination. So he's really been on the forefront of getting people back in the building, which has been happening very slowly, literally 1 or 2 people at a time. And it's usually the anchors. So we're trying to get anchors back in place to avoid lag time on live shots and whatnot. Our managers have been MIA since March, which is so weird.
Yeah.
But I know it is crazy. There's 3 closed doors at the end of the room since March. They've popped in 2 or 3 times within the last couple months, and that's it. So it's definitely a very different workflow, a different way of doing things, but it's absolutely incredible to see the teamwork come out and the communication that people have to remember to do now. That has actually, I think, been a benefit of it.
We just got a note. I don't even know if I should say this on the air here. If I get fired, I get fired.
It's not going out till Monday.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
we can edit it.
We've
never done that, James, in 16 years.
No, but my corporate folks just sent out a note today. The stay at home order working from home has been extended through the 1st of January.
Mhm.
For the people that are not in the building now working, they will stay home for the rest of the year, which who'd have thunk it back when this thing started, back in March. We thought, well, we'll be home for a few weeks or a couple of months and we'll be back. And
We're going on 7 months now.
Yep.
Yeah, I came back in June. They kind of made an exemption for me because we do so many products and services, and I work in a closet. I'm literally quarantined every day under normal circumstances. So I'm back here by myself, but that's amazing to me. And all of these, Betsy, the salespeople and the administrative people and all these folks, it's just a ghost town like you talked about over there. I rarely go over there because there's nobody home. Typically once a day I'd go over there and check it out. So they're renovating our building while there's nobody in here. So
Wow.
it's in fact, we have some new carpet. There's our new carpet down there.
Whoa.
Haven't spilled anything on it yet. That's good.
Yeah. and we have some new flooring out there in the hall. So that's I'll get something spilled on it here soon. So
are those carpet tiles, James, or is it?
It's it's very upscale. I mean, it's nice. I mean, of course, I had to move everything out of my closet for a day for it to do that. But they're renovating the building, and it's just an odd time. I will say during the tornado events we had this year, the station was good to bring people back in, and we had adequate staff to cover the big events. But under normal circumstances, like you say, Betsy, those newsrooms are just downright creepy when there's like nobody over there. I mean, wow.
But James,
It's definitely weird.
You kind of study, what's going on from a medical standpoint because you have some involvement in that field too. But it scares me to see these numbers in Europe that are like doing a rocket ship. I mean, they look frightening to me. Should I be frightened, or is it? Never be frightened. Never be frightened.
That's not the good word. You just need to be. The problem that we have in this country is this massive disinformation. It is the most complicated web that you have to maneuver through, and then you factor in politics and all this other stuff. So I tell people all the time: talk to your doctor. Go find a clinician, a real physician, and they can help you on the road to finding a good source that's reliable, that's not into politics and all this other stuff. And so I'm blessed to have, as Bill said, I've been volunteering at a hospital for 15 years. And in my position, I know a lot of clinicians and a lot of clinicians that are experts in infectious diseases. And I feel like I get really good briefings. Most people know I am the chairman of the board of a big hospital here. And
you have like a top hat for that, James? Or
that's right.
Do people have
big
to
old top
bow
hat.
when you walk in the room? or-
Yeah, do they? That's a good question.
That is a good question.
It doesn't work that way.
They do that anyway, Betsy. He doesn't.
Right, I know.
He's like the chairman
anyway,
of Alabama.
We get the most amazing briefings every day. So, and I think whether people are data driven, we're analytical, and I can look at data and numbers and kind of start to make some decisions. And it is a very real thing. And I think a lot of people down here kind of woke up to that fact when Nick Saban got quarantined here this week.
Right? I saw that.
He tested
I thought
positive.
Paul Feinbaum, he had the biggest look of shock on his face yesterday when he broke the news. I happened to be watching him when he said it. I didn't know what he was going to announce. It was the craziest thing.
Yeah, it's been a crazy couple of weeks. We had a hurricane last week, and I spent a lot of time with the Southeastern Conference officials and football coaches. We maneuvered through the weather last week, and now they're maneuvering through, COVID-19 this week. I cannot imagine being an official at the Southeastern Conference, these other big leagues trying to make these decisions. It ain't easy. No matter what you do, you're going to make people mad.
Did you maneuver LSU to Columbia?
I was not involved in that situation. I was slightly involved in moving the time of one game, and I'll just leave it at that. But anyway, I think Mike's on here, Bill.
Yeah,
I'm excited. I'm excited.
I told
we
Mike
have him here.
Tap dance with Betsy till he could get his computer restarted.
Does that mean I could just lay back and do nothing now?
Drink that wine.
Yeah, enjoy your glass of wine.
You're the heckling committee, Betsy. That's your job. Mike, are you good? Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Betsy's taking up on wine over there, so
I
this could
got
get
my
ugly.
wine.
Show title.
About to get good.
Has a paper bag around it.
There you go. Well, formally introducing our guest weather brain tonight. He's the chief scientist for weather operations for the United States Air Force. He's also the 2020 president-elect of the AMS. Mike Farrar, welcome to WeatherBrains. And we couldn't have Nate Johnson, who's the president-elect of the National Weather Association, because y'all can't be in the same room, we understand, by rule.
Well,
So
have you
even if
ever
it's
actually
virtual.
seen us together at the same time? We might be
Yeah.
the same person.
Now that is a thought. That is a real thought right there.
So that's just a peel and stick beard that Nate wears every week, I guess. Now that he's going to be, I hear you're a pretty good karaoke performer, Mike. If
Well, Betsy, hold up your wine glass. There's a lot of correlation to the performance value and my perceived skills to how much you have in your glass there, especially
He's
at the
amazing.
conference.
we thought you were going to say your performance value went up as the consumption of alcohol went up.
Well, at least my perceived value goes up.
Oh, okay, well that's good. All right, well Betsy will perceive you as extremely good, I hope, by the end of the show tonight. Then, but
He's amazing. He's good.
Well, Betsy highly recommended you, Mike, and then we just couldn't wait to get you on. And I didn't even realize, how much I couldn't wait to get you on until I saw you talk a couple of times at the NWA this year. Your talks were outstanding and just really fascinating. So I'm glad to have you here tonight. We all know the U.S. Air Force has its own weather service, but talk about the scope, scale, and mission of that organization and how it differs from the U.S. National Weather Service.
It's interesting. We have a common denominator. Most people don't know that the Air Weather Service, as it became to be known a while ago, actually started as one with the old Weather Bureau. It was formed long before the Air Force, long before the Commerce Department, as part of the Signal Corps of the U.S. Army, and over time it split. So we started as one organization. So over time, the Weather Bureau went to Commerce, and then it stayed with the Army, and then we formed as the Air Weather Service even before the formation of the Air Force. So as an entity, we're older than the Air Force. Over time, though, as we split off, the Air Force split from the Army. The Air Weather Service continued to support the Army. So there are no meteorologists working in the field in the U.S. Army. It's all Air Force people. So you get a lot of really kind of people scratch their head when they get their first Air Force assignment to Fort Polk, Louisiana. They go, what the hell? I thought I joined the Air Force. What am I going to Fort Polk for? So we got a lot of people serving all over the world with the Army, and now with the formation of the U.S. Space Force, we do the same thing for them too. So the meteorologists and weather forecasters, and I use those terms differently because we do have trained forecasters without meteorology degrees, which is the way the National Weather Service and the Weather Bureau used to work way back when. But we serve three services: the Army, the Air Force, and the Space Force, and we have roughly a little over 4,000 individuals spread all over the world. Primarily military. We have civilian employees, and I'm not counting the contract staff that we have in certain locations. We do support all the way from forecasting the weather and installations, no matter what kind of installation is, Army, Air Force, or Space Force installation, to we run a global weather center in Omaha. We have for a long, long time. So we have the equivalent of the Environmental Modeling Center, which is my old job with the National Weather Service. So we run numerical models for regional as well as global. We support strategic stuff all over the world for the different services. We provide support, weather support to the intelligence community. So we got a pretty broad-ranging mission. But in terms of number of people, we're roughly, pretty close in the order of magnitude to the Weather Service. We got a lot of commonalities, though. I mean, we in some locations we collaborate very closely. We put out TAFs and weather warnings, weather advisories for our installations. We do collaborate quite closely in the CONUS, especially with our National Weather Service counterparts. Overseas, we do some collaboration with our host nations. And then we do a lot of tailored support. You'll hear our old good friend Lou Luciolini, my old boss there at the Weather Service, talk about IDSS, or Impact-Based Decision Support Services. we've been doing that in the military since the beginning. That's kind of what we make our bread and butter for. So it's not new to us. We don't just forecast the weather. We make it real for whatever the mission that our services are, whether it's an aviation mission, a ground mission, or reconnaissance mission, all kinds of stuff. So that's kind of the broad scope. So I'll be happy to talk about any more of that you like. It's a great group of people. They serve their country all over the world and put themselves in harm's way. We got also a kind of group that's been kind of interesting. Over time, we had a lot of weather people that went in specially trained to work with the special forces, both of the so for the Air Force side, for the Air Force Pararescue and the Army Green Berets, and those guys are nuts. So they call themselves snake eaters. They go off and they're out there carrying the weapon and doing all the same stuff that their counterparts are, but they're taking weather observations and forecasting the weather. And you know, there's a lot of interesting characters there. And there were actually 3 weather people when they retook the I forgot which city it was. It was either Kabul or one of the other larger cities. They retook one of the embassies, and the people that re-raised the American flag on that was at the embassy was 3 weather troops.
Wow.
So they're out there doing all kinds of cool stuff every day, and I'm just proud to work with them.
I call them weather ninjas.
Weather ninjas, that's good.
That's pretty awesome. We usually talk about careers kind of toward the end of our conversations. And James, a minute ago, maybe before you came back, said, you know, we would get out early tonight. Mike, I hate to tell him we're going to go long tonight.
We'll go all night long.
All right, I gotta go crack open another bottle here with Betsy if you do that. So
because we got so much to talk about, but because we got 2 sides to talk about. And one thing we normally get in toward the and Betsy, please jump in, ask lots of questions, and talk as much as you can. You know that from being on the show before.
As much as she can. You don't know what you're asking for.
Yeah.
Wow.
We wound her up. So that's the goal tonight, the entertainment value, Mike, and just the intellectual value, Betsy. But so please jump in. You know, I'm just here to set the form and then, you know, take it and run with it. But Mike, we usually ask about careers at the end, but talk about, you know, you alluded to it there, you know, there are forecasters in the Air Weather Service. Talk about how it's different if you wanted to be a meteorologist in the Air Weather Service than it might be if you wanted to go into the National Weather Service or private or broadcast or some other way.
So I have to clarify, the Air Weather Service was the name we had for well over 50 years. That got disbanded a while ago. So we're not called that anymore. So the reason is that just like the National Weather Service, where everybody goes up through one chain of command and they all report in some way to Louis, we used to have the same structure in the Air Force, and we all had a general that owned all the forces. When that got split up, it got disaggregated. So we have a lot of the same number of weather people, maybe a few fewer, but we're no longer one organization. We have pockets everywhere. So the Air Weather Service itself doesn't exist, but we usually just refer to as Air Force weather. So that's sort of the community, even though we don't all report to an organization. So we have 2 tracks. So one is the same way as the National Weather Service. You come in with a bachelor's degree minimum in meteorology or strongly related science, and those are usually our officers. And so that's very similar to the way you would start off in the National Weather Service. We have but the ones that write most of the forecast and do the work for the lion's share of our forecast mission are enlisted forecasters. So these are kids that come in and with a high school degree only. They come at 17, 18, 19 years old. Some take a gap year and come in, but they come in with no college degree. They go to a tech school, and it's one of the hardest tech schools in the Air Force. And you got to be really good at math and science to get in. So we get the cream of the crop of the smartest kids that come in. And I don't say kids pejoratively. I mean, they are young people, and I'm old, so I can say that. So, but they come in with a pure training. They go to a tech school. It's the initial skills course. They spend several months learning forecasting. Then they go off and they do on-the-job training to become a forecaster. But they stay with forecasting for many, many years, whereas us officers, they're trying to grow managers and leaders. So we'll move around a bit more. We will go from staffs, where we'll do programming for budgets and planning and briefings and all kinds of programming and modeling, which I did a couple of my assignments. And whereas at least early on, most of the enlisted tracker, they're forecasting at every location, and they get really good at it. And so it's been very interesting to see the migration. And it wasn't that long ago that the National, it's only been 20 something years, maybe, I don't remember, but during the National Weather Service modernization, they did away with what they call MET techs for the most part, which are people come in without a degree, they can learn how to forecast and observe, and they went with all professional meteorologists. So that's, the Weather Service used to do it the same way as us. But these forecasters are good. They learn their skills, they take it very seriously, and they learn the art of forecasting and the science of forecasting. But they do so without a meteorology degree. But over time, most of them, as they stay in and they're progressed throughout their careers, they will take college classes and get their degrees the hardest way possible while raising a family, doing a job, and taking a few classes at a time, and they end up getting their degrees along the way. Often in meteorology, but sometimes in other skills. So that's kind of the two tracks we have. It's worked fairly well for us. But we do have some challenges that we have going forward. That old system, it doesn't work the way it used to. We get challenged on different scientific areas like space weather, which is really more space physics, and we're being called upon to be like the Mr. Spock. Everything environmental. They ask us whether it's fires, flooding, earthquakes, volcanoes. We're the closest thing in the room, so we have to start. We're starting to realize that more, and we've actually transforming our career field from just weather to weather and environmental services. So we're going to start acquiring, people in maybe with new degrees that are not necessarily meteorology degrees. And that we're literally just starting that now, and we're planning for that for the future.
That's much like broadcast meteorologists. I mean, no matter if it's what kind of science it is, it always ends up in our lap because we can explain scientific principles and the way science works. And it's just been incredible that, I'm like, well, I don't know this. I only deal with the first 50,000 feet of the atmosphere. You're asking me about the northern lights. I don't know, right? So there's how to explain this and that and earthquakes and all this stuff. And it's just because science is science to so many people. They don't understand that there's many different facets of science and different types of sciences that are very different from each other. They just figure science is science.
Mike, you mentioned these really smart kids end up going in this track sometimes. Do they know that coming into the service? Do they sign up for that, or do they take a test and test into that area?
It's a little of both. This is across the armed services. They take this Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, ASVAB, and it's different for each of the armed services. But you for the Air Force, you take it, and those that test really high in the math and science skills, those are the ones we go after. Some come in wanting to be weather forecasters. Others come in just wanting to go into the Air Force, and they get assigned into this field. And some want it, and some don't. And some go to forecast school and do great, and some don't. And if they can't get through, they may get reassigned to another career field. It's an interesting proposition. Although I have to admit, I'm one of the few Air Force officers that came in who did not want to be a meteorologist. I got told to do it. So that's a different story.
What? Wait a minute. Go back. Rewind.
Sounds like Betsy hasn't heard this story.
Well, I got my degree through an Air Force ROTC scholarship, which could be another form of military indentured servitude. So they pay for your degree, and that they own you for 4 years. And so I got my degree in physics. I was definitely a math and science geek from way back. I was inspired by the moon landings when I was a kid. That's how old I am, Betsy.
You're still hot. It's okay.
All right. Well, anyway.
Show title.
That's like the fourth one.
Yeah.
So
Betsy's like a show title machine.
So I got my degree in physics, and here I am, a senior in college at Purdue. And they call me in and say, hey, Mike, you got your assignment. And I'm going, hey, am I going to go to the Air Force Research Lab, or am I going to go to the newly formed Space Command? What am I going to do? And this jerk told me, he goes, what do you and Willard Scott have in common? And I went, did he go to Purdue too? No, you're a meteorologist. And my response was, the hell I am. So I literally asked, what are my alternatives? Because I didn't spend 4 years for a physics degree to go do something else. And they said,
to wish people the happy 100th birthday.
that's right. So you can go to Penn State for 1 year and bone up on me, get a 1 year program for meteorology. And so what's the other alternatives? You can report to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas.
No.
I went, what's there? They go, that's the military jail. Those are your alternatives.
Oh,
Wow.
So I went in and who knows? I mean, here I am 30 something years later, about as weather geeky as you get. So it was, you never know there's a few little turning points in your life, those little crossroads you don't think about. When they happen, you look back, it's like, man, if that had worked out differently, God knows where I'd be right now. I might even
you made some nice lemonade out of those lemons right there, Mike, somehow.
So easily I got to learn it. My first assignment after Penn State was to go to Germany, which is a rough assignment, let me tell you. It was Germany in the 80s, bratwurst and beer and folks marching and forecasting the weather and working long shifts. And but it was a lot of fun. And over time, it didn't take very long for me to get converted. So I don't regret a minute of it. It was.
I couldn't quite tell if he's being facetious there or not, James. Could you tell?
Yeah.
So we covered the Air Force. I guess we need to get in the Army. I guess we need to give the Navy a little equal time, Mike. So I guess they must have their own branch too.
They do. So they are. They support they have the same kind of thing, where they bring in enlisted folks and they will take them to a tech school and train them, and they have officers. They're a little different though. What they will typically do is they don't bring in as many officers, young lieutenants like I was, straight out of undergraduate school. They typically go and do surface warfare, submarine warfare, and then they later on in their career they go get a master's degree, and then they come into meteorology and oceanography at that point. So most of their data, and they're a bit smaller than us. They don't have as many forecasters, so they take a different structure. But the commonalities are pretty similar, and we work pretty closely together over. But it's a friendly rivalry, like you would expect. But they do things a little different, but we're a lot more in common than we have different. Other than, I'd much rather be on terra firma. The firmer the terra, the better. We're not floating around, moving around. None of that for me.
Well, we know how important the oceans are, and I know that's part of what we're going to talk about in a few minutes with the U.S. National Weather Service and the importance of coupling the oceans to the models and the eventual long-term goals. But are they better at that already, the Navy, just because they're oceanographers in general? Are they kind of ahead in that area, that arena?
Well, they think they are. No. They have a very, very good ocean modeling. They have for a long time. The model coupling aspect is something that they do well, but I wouldn't really. I think they do it well. I mean, we have our civil services and NOAA and NCAR, and so there's a lot of good pockets there. But they really do, as oceanography goes, they're really, really good at oceanography. I think we're probably. I have to look at our skill set and our depth in the meteorology atmospheric is better. But the coupling stuff used to be really just more for the long-term climate models, and now it's getting better and better, and we're starting to look at, starting to thinking about coupling for a 2-week weather forecast, whereas before we never saw the value. The Navy's doing that now. Their value, the forecast accuracy hasn't shown a huge improvement. They took a leap forward and starting to do that. And I know that NOAA, my friends in NOAA National Weather Service are looking to do that at the medium range. I would say at the seasonal to subseasonal scale. So in fact, I think the latest version of GEFS, so the Global Ensemble Forecast System, the one that was just implemented, is going to be the last one that's not ocean coupled. The next one will be ocean coupled. And this one would have been, I think, but they kind of ran out of time in terms of having to do all the reforecasts. So the next version of GEFS is going to be coupled, and that's just out there for 2 weeks and beyond, 2 to 4 weeks.
Now, I didn't know that the Air Force had their own model, and I don't guess I'll be seeing that on weathermodels.com anytime soon. But talk about that model and how it's important, it's different, it compares with other global models, you know, et
Sure.
cetera, et cetera.
Well,
And it's pretty weather nerdy, this audience, so you
sure.
can
Well,
get pretty weather nerdy here, Mike.
I would hope so. We don't really have our own model. We partner,
okay.
and we run a model, and it's our data. But in reality, we are a partner with the UK Met Office, and we run a version of the unified model. And so we're part of that consortium. There are many countries around the world that run that model, other than the UK, New Zealand, Australia. Let me see who else. India, South Korea, Singapore. There's a lot of countries that are partners. Some are more just receiving it, and others are contributing to the consortium. But we've been doing that for a few years. And one of the things, this is one of those, only in government will a budget cut lead you to a better solution. So I kind of told you we kind of started with the Weather Service a long time ago. I didn't mention in modeling the original Joint Numerical Forecast Unit. That started back in the 60s, I think. You want to get somebody going, talk to our friend Louis. He'll tell you all about it. That started, the very first modeling center in the U.S. started as a consortium between the Weather Bureau, the Air Force, and the Navy, all in one place. And eventually it split. Over time, our critical mass started to fade, and our model started falling further and further behind. And back in the 90s, the Air Force basically just cut our budget and said, you know, go, other people are doing weather research, go work with the Navy, go work with NASA, go work with NOAA. We don't care. We're taking your money for the Star Wars initiative or whatever back in the Reagan. So we lost all of our research money. So we had to partner. And so we ended up partnering, first accepting the Navy's global model. Then we ended up partnering with NCAR, with MM5, and became WARF. Now we're partnering on a global model with the Met Office. So we are taking really the world's second best verifying global model, and we're running it for our own use. It's a pretty good deal for the cut for us, is that we've got, we're spending not a lot of money, but we are able to exploit that capability, and we're putting out really, really good product for our usage. But you're right, I don't think you're going to see ours on weathermodels.com or whatever, but if you look at what the Met Office is putting out, we're probably a version or two behind them. We're running not the same resolution yet. In their data assimilation, they get a little bit different data than we do. So the actual forecasts are not bit for bit the same. They verify a little bit better than us, but we're still getting a great value for the Air Force, Army, and Space Force and other people we support.
So what are some of the future plans for, you know, your modeling efforts on the Air Force side and the UK folks?
Well, I mean, nothing's forever. So we ran with we were partnered with NCAR, and we patched together a bunch of WARF windows around the world for quite a while. In fact, I got us started in that when I was a major back in 1999, working in Omaha. So I wrote the first contract with NCAR, and we worked together on WARF. And that lasted for quite a while, and then we moved on to something else. So we're going to be with the Met Office for a while. Who knows what our future is? I can tell you right now, though, it's a great partnership with the Met Office. They're just fantastic partners. And they are getting ready to upgrade their model to, I mean, this is like anything else. Worst acronym ever, Next Generation Modeling System. So I got to talk about their acronym. They should go. But anyway, the next gen. So anyway, they're doing a brand new modeling system. It's going to be, they're trying to make it more efficient to run on next generation supercomputing. They're working on that now. So 5 years from now, they're going to be running a different model. Whether or not we're running that with them at that time is to be seen. We're going to get the best value for the Air Force, and we may repartner with somebody else in the U.S., or we may stick with them and jump. Right now, we're just going to, we're staying with our partnership with the unified model now for the next few years, and then we'll evaluate and make the decision that's the best value for the Air Force then.
And that was one of the things that I was so fascinated by. So Mike and I met a number of years ago at a National Weather Association conference. I think we ended up sitting next to each other at dinner and just had a fantastic conversation. He's so fascinating, so knowledgeable about the models. And so every year at the NWA, last year and this year, I've been the program chair. And so for the broadcast sessions. And so I'm trying to find new content and things to kind of get everybody moving forward, looking forward. And the models, I mean, that's our bread and butter, right? That's the first thing I look at in the day is what's the latest model? What's this? What's that? Especially when we have a big event coming. And it's just like I'm hitting F5 on the keyboard constantly as those models are updating. Like, come on, give me the information.
Exactly.
So I asked Mike to put together a presentation for us about the state of the models, because everything is constantly being updated. It's constantly being upgraded. What's the plan to replace this? What's the next version of this? And it's all about ensembles. That's like where everything is going now. So, Mike, I wondered if you would entertain us a little bit with kind of what's next for those models. You mentioned next gen and the UK Met, which is constantly being updated. But is there anything like brand new on the horizon coming that will be publicly available that people can keep an eye out for?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that one's already happened, and it's with our friends at the Weather Company. So they're running something they call GRAPH, and I forgot the acronym. It's global. Basically, it is a version of the MPAS model, the model prediction across scales that NCAR has done. It's their latest generation global model, but it's got variable resolution. So they're able to run that at like 3 kilometers over all the land masses of the world and run it at 15-kilometer horizontal resolution across the rest of the world, so for efficiency. But they're able to do that, and they're running that at very high resolution, and they're running it in high res rapid refresh mode, just like the HUR is for the CONUS. They're doing it for the world. All right, so they're using that to drive their point forecast products. I don't know that they're creating graphics products or mapping from it, but that whole idea of running a high res rapid refresh globally, they're the only ones I know that are doing it operationally now. For the DoD, that's something, we have a global mission. We're looking at maybe trying to do something like that to take advantage of all the satellite data that you have. And rather than having a 6-hour-old model that was assimilated, had 2-hour assimilation cycle. So by the time you get to the first forecast hour, that was 8 hours ago. The ability to do that, the fact is that the science is there, the data is starting to become available, and the computers are getting fast enough to be able to keep up. I think that's one thing you might starting to see. It may not be a big deal in terms of maybe the broadcast mission in the US because you're focused more on the CONUS, but those with a global mission, that's going to be important. The other thing that's coming, it's not old, it's not new science, and it's really not even new math, but the computers are now fast enough to do it, and there's enough data to do it, is we're looking at potential for short-range forecasting, not even having a dynamical model for some things, to just doing machine learning or artificial intelligence to be able to train a whole bunch of data and run it through these neural networks or other kind of training algorithms to be able to produce the short-term forecast that's basically just done through artificial intelligence, and you're not running a dynamical model at all. I think that's already starting to happen. Google, I just heard today there was a seminar that NOAA did, their second annual artificial intelligence workshop. They because it's COVID, they're spreading it out over multiple days. There's a talk today from Google that they're doing that right now in experimental mode. I think that may be the next thing for your weather warnings, for your weather advisories, things that it's evolving stuff that's happening right now. It's very long to assimilate data into a new model, to do the data assimilation, to run it forward time step by time step in a traditional NWP model. It's maybe faster ways and almost as accurate ways to do them in machine learning and AI techniques. So I think that may be the thing that you may see come out that will affect all of us, at least for short-term forecasting.
So does that basically mean that the output is not necessarily mathematically derived? It's more experiential, or how I don't understand that
It's more
difference, I guess.
statistical. I mean, you, and this is where you're getting beyond me. I'm a meteorologist. I'm not a.
Oh, come on. You know everything, and I know that.
No. No, but it's the point where sometimes if you run these neural networks and these statistical techniques, the data over time, with enough data to train it against real world verifying observations, there may be, the algorithms can pick out patterns that are almost replicating what a dynamical model would predict.
Okay.
But you can do so much faster. And this is the part that gets a little funky. It's almost like a black box. In some ways, if you may be getting the right answer and not know why you're getting it. That's kind of the scary part.
What would be the grid resolution of something like this?
That you're no longer bound at that point, James, by running a dynamical time step model. You could run it at much higher resolution than you do now. And that really gets down to the grid resolution of the observations that go in and the grid resolution of the verifying observations that you can train against. So if you've got mesonet stuff all over the country, you could conceivably have a pretty high a forecast at that resolution for many, many hours without even running a dynamical model. There's a lot of, the thing about it is it's really cheap to do once you've got the algorithm. It's much cheaper computationally to run it at the end, but to train all the data, it's huge. You need the world's largest supercomputer or something like that to do that. And so that's why Google's involved. And we've been partnered with Oak Ridge National Lab and other DOE labs. They have some of the world's largest computers as well. So it takes the big horsepower to train it, but once you train the data, then applying new data to it to crunch through the equations can be very, very fast.
A lot of what you just said is real familiar, because Monday night we had Dylan Steinkruger from Penn State on talking about machine learning and artificial intelligence and making tornado warnings, Mike, and that was very interesting. And you probably remember that talk too from NWA.
And I know there's a lot of people who are broadcast meteorologists who are fans of WeatherBrains, who are probably running WSI, Weather Company, and that graph model that Mike talked about, that's in the system now. And I, truth be told, I haven't put it, I may have put it on air like once or twice because I just don't trust it. Like, I'm just like, I don't, I'm not familiar enough with it. I'm one of those people, like, I have to have my own little verification process that I go through. I know that there's certain models that do really well in certain situations. Here in Northeast Ohio, we have lake effect, and it's just, it's horrible. The models don't get it. And unfortunately, we don't have our own mesoscale model here to be able to run. So, it's a trust factor when you start to build trust with the models. And when the models let you down, you get hesitant to look back at them. And I think that's something that is going to be built up as well, and that's one thing that really interests me about the artificial intelligence and the machine learning is that that trust factor is already established. So I don't necessarily have to build that.
Really good, Betsy. Your instincts are excellent because it comes down to verification and validation. So I'm not here to advertise the graph model. I'm just saying that was it's fairly new, and I think that's the portent of things to come. But you're right; it hasn't been around long enough to establish that track record of verification. So you're right to be skeptical about anything. So I agree with you.
James, does it give you pause when you hear the word Weather Company mentioned? Because that was our name. We sold them that name.
Wow.
That was the name of our little business, years. And now we bought a name called the Weather Factory for $9. Sold them the Weather Company. Yeah.
So Mike,
we'll tell that story another day.
Right. And then Bill bought another hotel.
Exactly.
We bought like the bell cart. That was all the money we had when it was all said and done. But talk for a minute about the unified forecast system and all the stuff that's going on in the Weather Service. Explain about the FV3 core and all that, just for those people who haven't really kept up with that. Mike, what's going on?
Sure. So I was heavily involved in that when I was the director of the Environmental Modeling Center back when I was with the Weather Service a few years ago. And so for a long, long time, our global model in the Weather Service was a spectral model. So you represented everything in spectral space. It wasn't a grid point model. And what was great about that is it was very, very efficient on supercomputers at a certain resolution. The problem with this is once you got to higher and higher resolution, that efficiency broke down. And so it got to the point where to go to any higher resolution, it wasn't going to really work anymore with the spectral model. We had to go to more of a grid point based model. And so we had a fly off back in mid 2015, 2014, somewhere in that area, where we had several different models that we came in and tested. And this is before I was the modeling center director. In fact, the decision was made right before I went there. And it came down to a couple of finalists, and one of them was the impasse model, which is the core of the graph that the other company's doing. And the other was the FV3 dynamic core from the GFDL and NOAA. And that one has its dynamic core. FV3 stands for finite volume cube sphere. So the 3 means cube sphere. So they represented the whole graphical dynamics. They took the entire globe, which is a sphere, and made it into a cube, which is a little awkward, but it was done for the way the math worked. And so several other models work that way. But the bottom line is we use that, and the reason that we end up selecting that, it was really more mature than the impasse model was at that time. And it had been running on a climate scale. So one of the things we wanted to do with our weather model is we wanted to extend its length. And so if you're not really worried about drift on your model, which is like the bias starts growing over time, if you're only going to do a 2 or 3 day forecast, you don't care about that because you don't have time to grow that out. We were looking to take our weather model and extend it seamlessly out into the seasonal scale. So we needed something that was conserved energy. So that was a big thing that Louis Uccellini he really was put his foot down. I want something that does really energy conserving models so that it doesn't drift one way or the other over time. And that's something that as a climate model is very, very important. So we took this dynamics that was running through climate models and made it, and we're adapting it now to work on the weather model. And so the beauty of that is we've got this seamless suite of products. It's going to go from the weather scale out to the seasonal scale, out to the decade, centennial, the whole thing. It's all running on one dynamic core. And so as we experiment with it and do things with it, we can apply lessons learned from the climate modelers, and then we can bring them into the weather scale and vice versa. So it's really a unified system. And so that's how it came up with the name, the Unified Forecast System. So the unification was the unification from the time scales, from weather through climate. That's kind of how it started. And the other part of this is, unlike, let's say, WARF, which is a community model, which many people contribute to. You can go download it on the NCAR site. You can run multiple physics. You can contribute to it as a user and make it into the baseline. Our global model, the flagship model of the National Weather Service, was never a community model. It was internal. It was our own model. So that was fine. It was one of the best models in the world at one time. But over time, we lost some ground to the Europeans, and we looked at this one as if we're going to go do a new one, we're going to make this a community model. So the other part about this is it's open. We're looking for collaboration from interagency and international partners. And so we're releasing the code. And I keep saying they're not with the Weather Service anymore, but I still feel like they're our family. As a nation, we're releasing the code just like it's a community model. We're hoping to get universities and research labs, other federal agencies playing with us to help make this the best national system we can.
Talk about the importance of increasing the vertical resolution and raising the roof of it, like the top of the model. Why is that important?
Well, I mean, the vertical resolution is similar to you're able to represent the phenomena in greater detail, whether it's the tropopause or wind shear. You can think of a lot of things that you need greater vertical resolution for. And so stability indices, there's a lot of things that you learn when you increase your vertical resolution, just like there's things you can represent when you increase your horizontal resolution. The raising the top is a little different issue. That one is, there are certain phenomena that can go really high in the atmosphere that may not be a big deal, but some may have feedback loops in, into the lower atmosphere. And the other thing we're wanting to raise the roof, if you want to call it that, is there's interactions between the atmosphere and the ionosphere, which affects space weather and vice versa. And so by bringing the model top up higher, it makes it easier to couple with ionospheric models. You can't really do that if your model top is much lower. Of course, it's expensive. I mean, whenever you raise resolution, it's more data points. It's going to take more computations, but that's the main thing. That's one of the big reasons we're raising the model ceiling, is for space weather concerns.
And if we can get any sudden stratospheric warming events, I'd really appreciate that. Sure. Thanks. From the northern states. Appreciate that.
So, Mike, some models will go away, right? In this process,
yes,
in the American Suite.
Certainly at the at NCEP, at the Modeling Center, there's several legacy models that all of you are near and dear to your heart, that you've learned about for years. The NAM, for instance, that's been frozen for a while. In fact, that's one of the things that we decided to go with the FE3. That was one of the first decisions I made there, is that we were going to freeze that model and put our effort into our developers into working on the FE3 core. So once we're able to provide some regional models and other capabilities that can replace that, the NAM will go away at some point. Right now, we're still producing those forecasts because it doesn't really cost us a lot because the work has been done to create the model. We're just running it. But yeah, that one would go away. Some of the other windows in the HREF, the high res ensemble forecast will go away. But for the most part, in the end, when we're done, we could have one coupled system where we have a much fewer number of model baselines to maintain, but still be creating the same types of products. I hope that got to your question.
Oh, absolutely. So some things like the HWRF and the HMON and all these things are going to be rolled into one product.
Right.
That
right
sort of
now,
stuff.
The HMON is a regional model that's basically the same dynamic core as the old NAM. And we built that one not because we were going to invest in the NAM, but because the model, really the software enabled us to do that. We're going to replace that dynamic core in HMON with the FE3 core. So we're going to pull out the NAM core with the FE3 core in. And at some point, we'll have enough. This is the other part, is you want to, when you're running an ensemble, you want to be able to represent the probability space. And it's really hard to do with one model. No matter what you do, it's sometimes hard to get the spread into possibilities to really govern reality. So we've been making up for that with multi-model ensembles, and that's why they've done better. Over time, though, Bill, we want to be able to regulate the probability space with a single core, so we can really control the statistics better. So when we're able to do that, the HWRF will go away. But until that time, we'll be running the HWRF.
And so there'll be some period where things won't get upgrades, and there'll be some moratorium period in the future, right? Talk about that for a second.
Yeah, the moratorium part is in some ways not related to the model upgrade at all. It's related to, we're buying, the Weather Service is buying a new supercomputer. And this is just the grunt work of running a computer, a high performance computing system. This is the unglorious, non-sexy part. You got to actually take the code from the old computer and make it run on the new computer. Ideally, you should be able to just move the code and it runs immediately. But the libraries are different. The operating system may be different. I mean, there's all kinds of things that's going to bite you in the rear. So it's going to take a while to move it over. So while we're going through the laborious part of that, we're not going to be implementing anything new. We're going to still be doing research off to the side and testing maybe, but there's an implementation moratorium while that's happening. And when my friends at the Weather Service told me that could last, approximately ballpark a year. They want to make that shorter than possible if they can, but they're planning for around that roughly that cycle.
So about what will our computing capability increase by with that system? Mike, what do you think?
Now you're challenging my memory. I think the new system will be roughly 5 times greater than the old one. I'm not 100% sure. I think that's about right, ballparkish. Ideally, we'd want it to go up even higher than that, but we are going to get a fairly decent jump if you look at it in terms of computing power. But the other part of it is not just about the computing stuff. Once you start running things at higher resolution, the data volume goes up. Then you got to worry about your storage. You got to worry about your communications. How can you possibly push that much higher resolution data? So we got to start thinking different ways about how we deal with the output, because the higher resolution you go, you can simulate things better, but the data output, it becomes so voluminous, it's hard to deal with.
Will all the outputs still be distributed to the field in the same way through grid files and things?
I just can't imagine. We're running out of runway already. I think the days of us sending out gridded data to every National Weather Service office, that's got to come to an end or change, because the data volume it's just too big. How can a forecaster look at 50 ensemble members? We're going to be running, we're already running a HER. We're going to be running a HER ensemble. We can't ship all that data out. We're going to have to be finding what the forecasters really need and get that to them.
Let's talk about these convection allowing models, the HER. How many members of the ensemble when that starts to become operational?
Jim, I'm sorry, I don't remember the answer to that question. It's obviously computationally limited. Early on, because it's so computationally intensive, they were running what's called a time-lagged ensemble, which means you only want run member every hour. So you got 15-hour forecast, and so if you've got 15-hour forecast, next hour you move, you can have like the same hour represented from 7 or 8 runs, but they're run an hour off.
Right, different times, right?
Right, but I haven't really asked that question of my Weather Service friends when they're going to do multiple members at each hour, but that will not happen, I don't think, until the new computer gets here.
Can I ask a random question? Why 51? Why not 7? Why not 15? It seems like 51 is like overkill in some of these things, but I hear 51 come back time and time again when it comes to ensemble forecasting. Is there something to 51?
Yes, I don't know if
Area 51 in New Mexico.
Yeah,
the magic number.
Well, I don't know if you ever watched this as Spinal Tap, but we wanted to go 50, but we put in one more.
Spinal Tap reference. Because it's 11.
There's nothing magic. Some of it is just if you watch the old show where you're stuck in a small town and your car breaks down and they ask you how much it's going to cost and they ask you how much you got. Really, I mean, we want as many as we can get we want as many members as we can possibly do to be able to represent the probability space. So some of those numbers just came from what's the maximum we can afford to run. So there's nothing really magic about 51, except for Area 51, which I can't tell you about.
You'll have to break our legs.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk about the reanalysis and reforecasting and all that process going back all those years to rerun the models, I guess, to validate and verify them. Mike, that seems
this is
fascinating
the part
to
that
me.
this is one of the things that makes some of the modeling really, really expensive. We got to find better ways to do that. So there's a calibration aspect, especially when you're running these seasonal and climate models, is you have to run, anytime you change something in the model, you change something in the physics, the dynamics, it has ripples. You don't even know what they are. And so if you've tuned something for 20 years and you make one change, it could totally change the results. You have to sometimes go back and rerun those past 20 years of data with the same data, but a new change in the model physics. So you get a perfectly calibrated set. You have to really do that, especially with the seasonal and sub-seasonal models, because you're doing that's all in probabilities. It's not, you don't do any kind of diagnostic single forecast for what's the temperature going to be in St. Louis 6 months from now. No one does it that way. It's always your ensemble and probabilities, but it's got to be really well calibrated. And so that's one of the things that takes us so long, is it's really expensive. Is not only do you have to spend all that computing power to rerun that many models for that many years, it's people. You have to babysit these runs. You have to make sure that things are working right. It just takes a lot of effort. And so we try to run the minimum amount we need to make sure that we haven't introduced a new bias or a change that's going to affect us in a different way. So sometimes with these short range forecast models, it's just the GFS, for instance, they don't run 30 years in reforecast. They sometimes only run 3 to 5 years. And they also calibrate to make sure that that even though they think that they've got the bulk statistics right, you often will see an implementation denied because it makes your average temperatures get better, your average winds gets better, but oh, by the way, your track forecast and your hurricanes just got worse. Are you going to implement that during hurricane season? So there's a lot of these testing that have to be done to verify that you haven't broke something else. And then sometimes what you'll do is you'll see these charts and it's a bunch of arrows, green arrows and red arrows. Little green arrows means little improvements, big green arrows being big improvements, same thing, little red arrows, downers, a little degradation, big degradation. And it's this huge map where you look at it, there's lots of green and red on it. And then you have to have somebody to make a decision that you're doing more, you're doing more improvement than degradation, and the degradation you can live with, because there's no perfect implementation that makes everything better at every level, at every time step, at every parameter. So it's pretty complicated, but in the end, we want to make sure that whatever new implementation comes in, the first step is like Hippocratic oath: do no harm. You don't want to go take a step backwards in your forecast accuracy.
Now you mentioned the climate versus seasonal. That word is important. Is any of that political, or is it all scientific that you're talking about the change of the name there?
Is there something political about climate? I haven't heard that.
No, not a word. We can't even say the word on this show. I'm surprised I didn't get buzzed.
I post a sunset picture and it's political. I mean, come on. Everything's political.
That's because, Span, you had a Marlboro Man look in the sunset. That was
That's right. You got a cigarette butt sticking out of your ear. That's as close as you get.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually not as bad as it used to be. People don't want to, I got to be careful here, but I don't think you really hear that much anymore. I think people, there's no one really attacking the climate research in NOAA. There was a time where that was a concern. There were certain members in the committees that were going after NOAA's budget, for instance, on the climate part. I haven't seen it as much from Congress. Let's put it that way. So I don't think it's as political as it used to be. I think the real difference is in terms of the modeling part. What you need to know is when you are doing a weather forecast, you are really dependent on the initial conditions. All right, so you got to get the initial conditions right, and then you diverge from there. So you forecast from initial standpoint, and you go forward in time. For a climate model, because you're going 100,000 years in the future, it doesn't matter what whether you start on March 1st or you start on March 3rd when the weather's different. The initial conditions exactly aren't the issue anymore. It's no longer a initial condition problem. It's the boundary conditions. It's the other parameters that determine how you go forward. It's interesting though, in the seasonal scale, it's kind of in the middle. So your initial conditions early on can influence your forecast several weeks out. But then really it gets into what the oceans are doing. They have longer time scales and how they change, rather the weather can change quickly, whereas the ocean currents and the ocean temperatures change more slowly. So that's the seasonal and sub-seasonal scale is a really interesting problem because it's kind of a hybrid between purely, it's kind of a hybrid between kind of the constraints you get from the climate scale and the weather scale.
Well, let's then flip that around and say, okay, if it's all data and analysis, how much budget is going toward improving data and analysis? The OBS are that Mesonet and the METARs. I mean, we have an aging infrastructure system for data, and how is that going to be improved over time? I know they're trying to get the aircraft data and all that stuff, but there's just a lot of room for growth, right? In that, and are they looking toward improving that at all?
I think they are. And this really, when you look at a global system, having I love the co-op program. It's an awesome program, but having a few hundred weather stations in backyards is not it only gets you in the boundary layer.
Mhm.
So it doesn't really do anything for above the boundary layer. And it's not very high resolution. If you really want to get a better global forecast, the only really way to do that is from satellite. Let's just face it. RAOBs and aircraft data and surface data play a role. But the value of the models took off once satellites were formed. We were able to take satellite measurements. Satellites are, the traditional satellites are really expensive. They take a long time to develop. They take a long time to get into orbit. They cost, the typical GOES satellite cost $1 billion, ballparkish. Takes, that's the development part too, not just the launch. And what's new, what's really exciting right now is the miniaturization of some of these capabilities that normally would take a satellite the size of a Volkswagen or even a small bus. Just like the phone, right? You look at your iPhone. We're able to. There are some really innovative companies and some government labs that are able to replicate some of that stuff in really small satellites. So I think this is the explosion that's coming. This is where I think that we're going to be able to do real global monitoring and for the models, initialization and much higher resolution and temporal frequency, not just a handful of polar satellites that will pass over the same place twice a day. We may have dozens, hundreds of small satellites that are giving us data quality that we used to get from a $100 million satellite 10 years ago, 20 years ago. We may get them from a $10,000 satellite in a few years. I think that's to me, where that's the big explosion that's coming. It's going to be hard to manage because you're going to have to be dealing with companies. We're not going to own all the data. We're going to have to buy some of them are going to have to buy the data. We're going to have to lease it. It's going to be coming into us in different formats. It's going to be a bear to manage that. But I think that's the future that I think that is really going to be the real next huge quantum leap in terms of observations. It's coming from, I think, small sats.
Let's get Elon Musk on the show. He's launching these Starlinks. I mean, he knows how to do this.
He does. In fact, we in the Air Force have been talking to him about putting some weather instruments in some of those things.
Breaking news.
There are many other companies that are doing it. We have, in fact, Congress has given money to us, to NASA, and to NOAA for a commercial weather data pilot to try to experiment and spur industry growth in the small satellite industry. So it's really exciting. I think that this is going to be I think that and the new advent of the next generation computers that are going to be able to do things for cheaper and less power than the traditional, I think, computer chips have done in the past. When you marry up a ton of data with faster computers, it's going to be exciting in a few years.
So satellite data, that kind of becomes the way of getting the real-time upper atmosphere data. What about weather balloons? Do they serve a purpose anymore? The old radio sondes that go up around the world? I mean, I love looking at a good skew-T plot. I mean, are they going away?
No, I don't think so. They're there for, they serve a valuable role because they're independent calibration. All the things in satellite are remote sensed. So, you can't, in some ways you can't beat an in situ measurement. So it's important to have this vertical. That's why one RAOP is worth 1,000 satellite ground measurements, as far as I'm concerned, when you're talking about a global model. So I don't see the RAOPs going away. I really don't. I think if nothing more than calibration for the satellite data, they play a valuable role.
Does anybody else feel like talking to Mike is like ordering something from IKEA, and that flat pack arrives, and you open it, and you just start pulling out all these pieces, and it can be very overwhelming with pieces, but then Mike kind of guides you through how to set it all up. And
I was
then when
going
you're
to say
done,
that he put it all together
you're
for
like,
us, Betsy.
I have this fantastic new bit of knowledge. It's totally the IKEA flat pack, Mike. I have just made you into IKEA spokesperson. But
James, I think it's the most hopeful show we've had in 14 years.
So Betsy, one of the most frustrating things there is to put together IKEA furniture. I'd say, Mike, you're as frustrating to talk to as putting together IKEA furniture.
No. Well, once you can figure out all the weird, graphics and stuff like that, yeah. But I that's your language a long time ago. And it's so fascinating. I learn so much every time we have a conversation, and I have new questions, and I guarantee you next week at some point I'll be looking at the model thinking, man, I wonder if this is something that's coming in the new one. And it's so great to have you as a real person. I know you have a physics brain and you're the guru of models, but you explain everything so well so people can understand. And that's just so invaluable.
I appreciate that. But one of the things that I really enjoyed was the NWA thing. So I'm not going to be Greg Carbon every year talking about the top 10 weather things. I would love to do that every year.
That'd be great.
We could make a drinking game to it, right, Betsy?
I'm signing you up. Yeah, of course we will.
Mike, I've got one more question. I know James is going to want to move to some recorded segments. I hope you can stick around, but if you need to leave, that's fine too. But you mentioned, we talked about coupling the ocean and the importance of satellites. What other things are going to get coupled in, like the polar ice caps and things like that are important that we don't have now?
Sure. Well, we've already been doing that in the climate models for a long time. And so we've been coupling not just the oceans and the atmosphere. We've got a wave model. So, the wind near the surface can drive the waves, and that changes, and the waves there's a sea roughness that changes the way the radiation comes up. So there's an important coupling there at the ocean surface with waves in the atmosphere. That's been done for a while. There's also, as you mentioned, the sea ice, and then there's aerosols as well. So there are several coupling things that we know how to do, but typically those only make a big difference in really long projections, because in the short term, your sea ice isn't going to change. If you're up in Alaska and you want to know what the weather, what the winds are going to be like in 3 days, the sea ice isn't going to change in 3 days much. So normally those kind of things only for much, much longer time scales. But as we're getting more and more precise and the computers are getting better, I think that we're going to be able to get more value in coupling for much shorter forecasts. So I think that's the changes coming. We've been doing it for climate for a long time. I think you're going to start seeing that coupling come into play early, because we're going to be able to squeeze out a little bit better forecast by really take into account those small changes, even in the weeks period, which we really haven't done before.
Hey, Mike, you ever talk to your old buddy Neil Jacobs over at NOAA?
I do. He was a good friend of mine. He was a good collaborator when he was with Panasonic. In fact, he gave one of the keynotes today at this machine learning artificial intelligence thing from NOAA. He talked about the future of that in data assimilation. So yeah, I talk to him every now and then.
He's a modeling guy, and modeling guys ought to be talking, I mean,
he's a real modeler. So the thing about it is he got the degree, the patch, he wears the patch, and he got the decoder ring, all that stuff. I actually never did that for I'm a satellite remote sensing guy by education. My aspects of modeling have been through leading organizations. I started with the Air Force and then through the National Weather Service. So I kind of picked it up along the way.
Well, as a practitioner, and I think I can speak for others on this group here, I want to thank you guys, because nobody ever stops to say thank you anymore. All you hear is these griping and moaning and groaning. I think where we've come with modeling is astounding if you consider the task at hand. You consider what we're trying to do here. The computational power it takes to do what we're doing right now is stunning. And what you're talking about in 5-10 years, that's unbelievable. So thanks for the vision. And thanks for the work and the brain power here. The folks down here, the troops in the trenches love what you're doing. So thank you.
You really appreciate it. I really enjoyed it tonight. So hopefully I can come on again and talk to you about something else.
No, we'll talk more about this, but we have to stop. Jen has a This Week in Tornado History. We're going to come back and do Picks of the Week as WeatherBrains rolls along.
This week in tornado history, October 23rd, 1934. An estimated F2 tornado moved to the northeast from 4 miles southwest of Maryville, Missouri. It moved right through town and hit a Depression area civilian conservation corps camp northeast of town. It ended 6 miles west of Parnell. I'm always fascinated by the newspaper accounts of tornadoes, especially from some of these older events. The Maryville Daily Forum described the event like this. In the stillness of the evening, as preparations were being made for the evening meal, the copper-colored clouds struck with a viciousness that left only debris and writhing forms. The damage truly was significant. 60 homes were unroofed or damaged in Maryville. The newspaper denoted that the worst damage in the downtown area was done at the McFarland Ice and Fuel Plant. The building lost its roof and it was carried west across the street and landed on top of the Martin building. Heavy concrete blocks were piled to the inside of the building. The damage at the Civilian Conservation Corps camp was tremendous. The barracks was destroyed, and tragically, 5 were killed. Here are their names: Harvey Drake, Guy R. Allen, H.S. Newton, Ralphie Hare, and Samuel F. Morrow. They were all veterans from World War I. To honor their memory, I have included the names of these heroes in our article about this event at tornadotalk.com.
This was 1934, Jen? Wow.
Yeah, 1934, Maryville, Missouri. It was only later rated F2, but tragic event.
That's incredible. I see stories of tornadoes. Bill, in our state, we had the great tornado outbreak of March 21st, 1932.
32, right?
And, you look this up in storm data and they've got, EF numbers. I mean, who is in charge of going back and looking at the historical data and applying an EF scale rating to these things, Jen? I mean, how does that work?
I know Fujita was involved, obviously. A lot of it, if you will, you can learn a lot from Grisoulis. College students, interns went back and they had a criteria and they went and just assigned some of the numbers. And so a lot of there isn't a lot of it that was rated from 1950 on, or even beyond that. I mean, Grisoulis did everything between before 1950, but anything that's on record between 1950 and, let's say, the mid to late 80s, he really doesn't buy it a whole lot, because it's just kind of random. And then it started getting better, and through the 90s, then up into this point. But yeah, there were interns that did it.
Wow. All right. Well, let's do picks of the week here. And first off, we should mention, Bill, that we are sponsored, and we need to thank our sponsor. And I'll let you do that little message here.
Our friend Bruce Jones may not join us tonight, but he's been an outstanding ambassador the entire time. We're, of course, sponsored by Midland Weather Radios. But I've always been fascinated by the fact that from the beginning, when I pushed Bruce to come up with a tagline or a saying or some copy we could refer to, he said, "Bill, I'm not going to come on and push Midland." He said, if you buy Weather Radio, most likely you're going to buy Midland Radio. He said, "I'm here to be an ambassador for this incredible system that, over time, the Weather Bureau and the National Weather Service created." And so, with over 1,000 stations broadcasting weather information, across our great country, plus, Environment Canada doing the same thing, it's an amazing thing. But, the fact that I can get this incredible WR120 Weather Radio for $29.99, and not only that, get 15% off of it by going to Midland's site at midlandusa.com and putting in Span's name with the number 15, that's amazing that I paid double that for a weather radio in 1976 when we got our station KH54 in Birmingham in November of that year. And that weather radio is reliable as rain. And, they've got other special ones like their crank version there, the ER210 that, does about 10 things. You can start your car with that thing, I think, James, if you need to.
Yeah.
But you certainly can power your cell phone, and you can, you got a light in it. You got about 9 things off your hurricane, safety kit right there. And we thank Midland for their support of WeatherBrains, and encourage you, especially as we get into the holiday gift giving season, to go out and remember, that your friends, your family members all need a weather radio in their homes, just like they need a smoke detector or a carbon monoxide detector. They need a weather radio. And we need to be the ones that are pushing that.
We did an informal poll last night, but oftentimes before we do the late news here, we have, they go live on Facebook, on the TV station's Facebook account. And those numbers are stunning. I looked at the numbers on that live we did. Over 1.5 million people watch this, which is crazy. But I like to do research, and I said, how many of you have a weather radio? And if you don't, that's okay. I'm not going to fuss at you. I just need to know how many of you have a weather radio. And only about maybe 15% had one. And most of the people that watch this Facebook Live, they're in a very tornado-prone part of the southern United States, and the tornado season begins in 2 weeks, November. That's a big month for tornadoes down here. And so, again, what we ask people to do, if you're watching this show, you're a weather dweeb, a dork, nerd, weenie, whatever. I mean, you got one of these things. I guarantee if you're watching or listening to this show, you've got a weather radio. But you need to be our ambassador, our evangelist. You need to go out and tell your family members, your friends, your neighbors to get one of these things, especially if you are in a tornado-prone area. And again, you got the deal there, so that's important stuff. All right, let's do Picks of the Week. We're going to go around the horn. Everybody's going to share something that is weather-related. This can be a website, hardware, anything remotely related to weather. And Jen, I know you got one because I saw the email flow through. So go.
I do, and mine is based on a tragic event that happened just a couple of days ago, and I wanted to share the GoFundMe page for storm chaser Jason Cooley and his and Chandler Sullivan. They lost their daughter in a car accident. Jason was in the car too. I do not know him except by name, and just knowing that he's a chaser and is very well known in the community. And she passed away from her injuries, and it was just a tragic event. So they have a GoFundMe page set up, and I wanted to share that for everybody.
Yeah, that's a really tragic story. That was a texting and driving situation, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah,
it
goodness.
was.
So again, if you can help, that's awesome. My pick is a piece from Popular Science about the dispersion of wildfire smoke. We've had all the wildfires in the western states, and the title of the piece is "Wildfire Smoke Travels Far but Never Really Disappears. Even after the densest clouds disperse, the effects from smoke last longer and travel farther than you might think." A very interesting piece. All right. Betsy, do you, ma'am, have a pick of the week for us?
Did you see the moment, Terry, look of fear and shock?
I saw it. Don't pick me. Don't pick me. Don't pick me. Don't call me. Don't pick me.
Right? Okay. I do actually, and it kind of pivots a little bit off of the weather radio pitch. You know, a lot of people say, I have my phone, I don't need a weather radio. Well, keep in mind, cell service goes down just about the time that you need it. And you won't have it, and you need that information. So the weather radios are definitely a good thing. On the heels of that, then, if you're also looking for a good Christmas gift, a weather station is a great Christmas gift for people.
So people all the time, Betsy, ask, which one do you recommend? This is great. This is so good. You're bringing this up because I'm going to refer them to this segment right here.
Oh, good. Thanks. I'll tell you what, I think it all depends on your price points and then what you're going to look for as far as the data that you want. So a good all-around weather station that has an outdoor separate monitoring station is key. And if it's wireless, even better. A Costco and Sam's Club, this is the time of the year, they're going to start stocking them. It's like a little lacrosse home weather station. You just need something that gets you close, right? For the weather weenies and dweebs and dorks like me out there. And I bought my parents one of these. A Davis weather station is really good. And it's a little more expensive.
Little pricey.
Man, your data is going to be good. And you can also get the uplinking, which allows you to see your data from anywhere that you go. So if you're on vacation in Tahiti, you can say, oh, I wonder how much rain we got home today. You can just look it up on your phone and see. So yeah, definitely the uplinking is a cool feature, but there's a weather station for everybody.
It's 22 in Cleveland, right, Betsy? Yeah. When you're in Tahiti. Yeah, I got one of these, the Tempest weather system by WeatherFlow. I'm excited. I've only had it over here for about 6 months. I've got all my materials. I'm gonna start setting the post on Saturday. I'm gonna do it right. Got it sighted, and I'm gonna be putting it up. So I'll have some reviews on that. So it looks.
I
cool.
still need one. I don't have a weather station. I'm a big weather geek, and I don't have one. So I need to remedy this.
We got to work on that.
Oregon Scientific used to make some fantastic little pieces parts that you could get independently and build your own little a la carte station, but they're not around anymore. So hopefully you can still find something that fits what you need. But they do make great gifts.
My little Net Atmo. I've had a Net Atmo for about 4 years, and it's
a what?
Rain gauge.
Net
Atmo.
Atmo. Never heard of it.
And it's
Okay.
got several, interior and exterior. We have a sensor in the attic and, a sensor outside and a couple in the house. And, it's been extremely reliable, and the rain gauge is outstanding. We've had several big rain events, and it always compares favorably to the manual rain gauge. And I have an old Oregon Scientific rain gauge, Betsy, that has an interior monitor, and it tips at about every 400ths, and this NetAtmo tips at about every 100th, and but it always comes out about the same in the end. So I've been real pleased with it.
Cool.
There you go. And get in touch with your local television weather person so you can be a volunteer weather observer for them with your new weather data that you'll be
That's
Yes.
right.
spitting
Send
out the
all
world.
inquiries and data to James Spann himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Respect the polygon, right, Betsy?
Yeah. So Mike, what you got? I know you've got something good for us. I sense it in my bones.
Yeah, I do. And so there's been a lot. You talked about the politics of climate change, and so there is an interesting shift that's happened in the other direction. That there is a very hot area that is becoming much colder, and that is that now that the Cleveland Browns are 4-1, the hell is actually freezing over.
Show title.
I'm dead.
Wow.
That's great.
Wow. That's the greatest pick ever. So
Freddie Kitchens just got
4-1.
him prepared last year.
That's great.
Sorry, Betsy, I couldn't help myself.
Oh, I'm proud of you. No, I.
Bill, where is Freddie now? Did he move back to Alabama? What's he doing? Do we
I
know?
don't know. That's a good question. I had lunch with Jeff Rousey of all people today. James, a former Alabama assistant coach under Gene Stallings, and shared a lot of old football stories, and it was a lot of fun. He said he told a funny story about recruiting Freddie Millens, James. He said he got a call and said, get to Starkville, you got to go beat Steve Spurrier to recruit this young man who was really special wide receiver. And so he said he went through Gordo, Alabama, James, doing 90 miles an hour.
Got a speeding ticket. I know what
And
he
so,
got. Yeah.
So the Gordo policeman pulls him over, and they think he's stolen a state car. And so he when the policeman comes up the car with his gun drawn, he said, look, I'm a University of Alabama coach, going to recruit this, young man out of Starkville. He said, well, why didn't you, I didn't know that. He said, follow me, I'll carry you to the Mississippi state line. So he gave him a police escort.
That'll give him clearance through reform, so he's not going to be stopped over there. So how is Tito Francona doing, Betsy, our buddy, the baseball manager?
Terry's doing good. Actually, I texted him, and I put out on Twitter when the Browns were 4-1. The last time the Browns were 4-1, Terry Francona was the manager of the Birmingham Barons, and Michael Jordan was his outfielder.
There you go. That's it.
So
Yep.
I actually texted him. So he's doing very well. He's recovering and just kind of holding his own. He's just as cranky as he can be when he wants to be, but he's a sweet guy. I think everybody kind of sees his real heart when they get to talk to him. He's a
great guy. He when our youngest son was 12, we played in a tournament in Cooperstown, and the boys voted to go to Fenway, and he was managing Boston at the time, and he let those boys in early, and we had it was the most incredible experience. But he's a great guy, but I know he's had some pretty serious health scare, so I'm glad that he's doing okay.
He has. I'll text him and tell him you said hello.
Yeah, please do. All right.
He'll be thrilled.
Good old Birmingham boy, still love him. So we got to go.
He doesn't even come to me for picks of the week anymore because
no, Bill, you're right. Bill,
you don't even ask me anymore because
I save you because you're the promo guy. So pick of the week and promo, go.
Oh, give me the foghorn for the pick of the week because I don't have one. But
you don't. After all that,
he doesn't have one.
After all that, you don't have a pick of the week. I mean, you got to do foghorn.
My picks of the week are just all these incredible guests. I mean, like tonight, scoring Mike and Betsy on a duo.
Thursday
incredible.
Night special here. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, on the 26th we'll be talking Lightning, James, with Ron Holly and some folks, from whatever that company escapes me all of a sudden, but
Vizsla?
Yeah, Vicela. That's it. Thank you, Betsy. November 2nd, we'll have Beth Carpenter, JT Cooper, James Morrow from the National Weather Service in Blacksburg on the 9th, and lots of great stuff. Barb Mays Boosted's going to come on and talk on November 30th about her research into Louisa May Alcott and the long winter. I don't know if you saw that. And Sean Potter is going to join us with his new book about Cleveland Abbey on December 7th. So that's going to be exciting. And then, of course, James, December 28th, Greg Carbon.
Greg Carbon, meteorological memories.
Yeah, meteorological memories. See what he gets to add to it.
So Betsy, people want to follow you on the Twitter, the Facebook. Plug away. This is your plug opportunity here. Go.
I am at Betsy Kling on all platforms.
Ooh, that's awesome. Slightly awesome. All right, Mike, I know you're on the Tweeter. What's your Tweeter handle?
Oh, I don't tweet myself. I don't even remember. I think it's at Mike Farah _weather or WX.
WX, yeah, that's it. So get back on the Twitter. Twitter was down today for a while. The world panicked for about 2 hours when the Twitter was down, but it's back.
Ugh.
But I've got to, they're leading. I can't believe they're leading with weather tonight. They're not leading with Nick Saban in quarantine. It's actually weather tonight. So I got to go to Studio A here. So here's the deal. WeatherBrains is typically produced live Monday nights. I know this is a Thursday night special, typically Monday nights at 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Central. So you can watch. We'll be back on Monday night on October 26th. If you want to get in touch with us, the email address, it is email@weatherbrains.com. Aubrey Urbanowitz is our email official. She'll be back with us on the next show for an email segment. And all the show notes, the picks of the week on the website, weatherbrains.com. So on behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thank you for listening. Have a great week and God bless. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
thank
much.
you.
It was so
Mike
nice
and
to meet you
Betsy.
guys.
Great
That was
show.
so
This was